Hello, and welcome back to Redefine Parenting. I am your host, Venu Keller, and I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores and iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 216 and forward. Today, I have an amazing guest. He's my mentor. He's my friend. He's been my teacher for years. And I have the honor of bringing Joseph McClendon III to Redefine Parenting. Joseph, welcome to the show. Most people already know you, so you don't need a huge introduction, but he's been on several stages. He's a doctor of neuropsychology, and he is the founder of the Neurocoding Institute, which has created many, many successful neurocoding coaches and speakers out in the world today. So the reason why I wanted to bring Joseph on is I asked Joseph a question 2 years ago. I was at a trainer academy, and he was one of the guest speakers. And I asked him, I said, what does it take to get a kid motivated? Because I had this illusion that motivation doesn't exist. Motivation happens in the moment with the emotion you're feeling in that moment. When that emotion's gone, there's no more motivation. And I said that to Joseph, and he says, you're spot on. So I thought I was like really great because I was spot on that. And then he said he wanted to take it a step further. It's not about motivating it. It's about creating the pull. So when we had this conversation, it had changed the trajectory in my household with my kids, but it also changed the trajectory in my coaching for the kids that I coach today. Because one of the number one issues that parents have today is, how do I get my kids to move? How do I get them to do anything? And I know, Joseph, you have a son who is now a teenager, which is so crazy to think he's a teenager now. So welcome to the show. And what light can you shed on that? Like even with your own son, looking at where he's at and what you're doing as a parent, as a teenager. I mean, you've got to see even him sometimes like, oh, I don't want to do it.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm so proud of you. You're such a professional on this. I'm listening to you and watching you, and this is a whole nother side of you that I have not seen. And I know the people's lives that you're touching are making a difference there. And you are so spot on. And I remember when we had that conversation, Venu, and I said that about the pull. Now, first off, I want to say, as you said, I am the proud parent of a teenager. My son is going to be 16 in January, so just a little over a couple months from now. And I'm going to be the first to say that I am not, I'm still learning as well. Because the one thing that the common thread that goes through all teenagers is that they're all unique. Yes. And they all have their learning styles. And yes, with neuroencoding, we can kind of, cordon them off and just say, okay, well, this person definitely is more visual learner, auditory learner, and things like that. And they'll surprise you from time to time. And so if I was going to shed some light on it, I'd first kind of talk about that whole concept of pull versus motivation. And such a great explanation that you said, Venu, with regard to motivation, because it wears off. It's in the moment and it does go away. It's, I've heard that saying, I think it's Les Brown says that motivation is like a warm bath. It feels good when you're in it, but sooner or later, if you don't do something about it, it's going to get cold. You got to get out. So the concept of pull is this. It's the carrot on the stick. It's something that they're going towards, because motivation, whether it's pain or pleasure, will get you off the dime to do something. But what keeps you going is what's in front of you. And so one of the things, obviously, is to help that child find out what they want and what gets them up and what they're going after. And sometimes, I will say this, the things that are the pull for them are not always things that we agree with. And the example for me is, I'm one of those parents that believes that video games, especially at the level that they are right now, are not always the healthiest things for our kids. And that's a whole nother discussion. And what pulls my son is video games. And so, the flip side of that is taking them away from them to get them to do things. And what I found with him is to help. Oh, there's some static going on. Okay, that must be on my bad. Okay, is that better?
No, it's still a little bit of staticky.
Oh, okay. You know what I might do? Here's what I will do while we're midstream here, is I am going to actually switch mics just so that doesn't happen. Please bear with me. I apologize.
So this is like what's great about technology, right? That there's so many different ways that we can change things around even midstream. So thank you guys for being patient with us as we get this, because I really want you guys to hear this information, because again, this has been definitely life-changing for myself and for the clients that I work with.
How's that, Binu? Is that better?
It's still like when you talk it, there's still some static.
Oh, I don't know what it is then, because I have used my best mic here. I switched microphones.
It's a little
Any
bit better.
better?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
just keep going.
Okay. So for my son, it was video games, so I had to find a way to have that compromise with him and just say, okay, well, if this is what you want, let me show you how you can get that and still fit within the parameters of this household and everything, and still fit within the parameters of you still becoming a better person and a good person and everything. So that is his pull. And, that's just one way. And I say to other parents, if you will, that find out what not motivates your child, but what your child wants. And sometimes that's difficult because they're not always forthcoming with that stuff.
Right, right. And I think that you're spot on. And because I do see, electronics being a huge thing for kids, but we also have to understand we're in an electronic world.
No
Like even if
doubt.
we didn't want our kids to have electronics, they're going to school and they're given iPads, they're given computers. They, in my generation, your generation, we didn't even have that. Like that was a foreign concept to us to think the World Wide Web. What? I remember those words came out, and now
Yeah.
look where we've come from. So it's really difficult to tell kids that, okay, don't be on your screens, but it's okay to be on your screens at school. Like there's so much like I think it's just like so much dilemma in that, because kids' brains, of course, they're not developed. So they're like, well, why is it okay here, but it's not okay here? And the other thing is that I think with video games in itself, it's also what video games are they playing? Because a lot of them are
No doubt.
strategic,
Yes.
you know, and it's bringing out their creativity. It's bringing out what they can do, and that's why it's fun to them. There's again that pull to them, like what can I create and what is it going to do in this game? you know but going back to getting kids, like one of the things I hear all the time, and I had the same issue, and this was my question 2 years ago, was like my kid didn't want to get out of bed. Like school is
Oh
not
yeah.
for kids. It's just not.
Yeah. And again, and it's a delicate conversation. We teach align and redirect. In other words, to get that connection with your child that might not be there, because as a parent, we see things, we witness things, and we compare those to our own lives, and we go, if I was his age, I would want to know, and I would want to know if I look back on my life, and I wish I would have listened to these things from my parents or people that were trying to teach me. I wish I would have learned that earlier, but nobody could have told you that at that age as well. We all had parents that said, do this, don't do that, and we didn't listen to them. And so I've found that, and not just with kids, but with just people in general, to align with them first. And that's such a difficult thing to do. For me, I'll give you an example. My son, video games were a problem, and a big problem. He wasn't doing his schoolwork. He was just becoming lazier and lazier. And it happened the most during the pandemic. Because when he was growing up before pandemic, I was able to say, okay, you have this amount of time on video games, and that's it. But when the pandemic happened, especially because like you said, the way that they were learning in school was through their iPads and was online and everything, and it was hard to get them away from that screen. And I love what you just said there, Vinu. Why is this good? Why is it okay to do this and it's not okay to do this? Not to mention, I was doing my business in the house and everything, and he's seeing me on the screen all the time. And so I finally sat down with him and I just said, show me what's so great about this. And when I did, he sat down, he says, grab the paddle. Now, I have all of the video game skills of a slightly intoxicated circus pig, and he was just running me into the ground. But I let him do it, and I go, show me how to do this, show me how to do this. And I actually got into it and learned it. I was horrible, but I learned it. But that bonding experience with him, and it was interesting, Bina, because he was now in the superior mode. He was in the teaching mode, which a lot of parents have a difficult time listening to their kids. Why would you listen to a teenager? They're teenagers, and as you said, their minds are developing. And that one thing right there, and I didn't attach anything to it. I left that experience, and I did it a couple times. I said, that was great. Let's do it again later. And I didn't come back and give him my pearls of wisdom as, why, and go any further than that. I left and I came back. I did it a couple times. And now he and I had that kind of bond.
I think that that's so important, that what you said is that you put him in the superior posture.
Yeah.
Because I think so much kids think that, oh, you're my parent, you're in charge, and I always have to learn from you, instead of being able to experience, what is it to lead my parent? What is it to lead a leader? And that in itself makes a child, one of the things I always say on my show is like, how do we get our kids to have that open, safe, and trusting space to communicate with us?
Beautiful.
And when we do that, that's one of the strategies I would share with the listeners today is like, how are you aligned? Number one, you said align with your kid, right? How do you align with them? But number two, how do you put them in the superior posture? How do you get them to say, hey, I know something you don't know and you want to learn from me? You validate them. You validate their worth. You give them worth. You give them like, wow, I am worth you learning from me, not just the other way. And that does so much to a relationship.
It really does. And it puts them in a position, believe it or not, what happened with my child, he started to listen to me more. He literally started to open up and come to me, but because then we're having an exchange. Because before then it was just dad tells me what to do. Right. Dad is, the instructor, he's the leader, he's the father, and all those things. And now it is, we are, because we want them to. I said this to him a couple days ago. I said, every animal in the animal kingdom, including human beings, although we have, let's just say, devolved a bit, every animal knows that they have to kick the baby out of the nest at some point. And every animal grooms their offspring to be able to fend for themselves and to be on their own. I should say every animal. Some animals, they come out of the egg and they never see their parents. But when, in the grand scheme of things, that's what our job is. And even those, by the way, even the animal that comes out of the egg has been imbued hereditarily and in its DNA to know how to take care of itself. So the design of life itself is to, at some point, be able to be on their own. And so when you look at it as you are assisting your child in coming to that place sooner, that they're becoming an equal, a teacher, and all those things. And I got to be honest, it does take some swallowing of pride and ego on the parent side as well, because it's almost like we feel like, okay, well, we're letting them do this, we're letting them run their lives. Well, no, you're letting them be able to, as you said, Vinu, have a voice, have an opinion, and to be listened to, because up until then, they're not listened to.
Right. Right. And I mean, I think that all has to do with, again, going back to how do you motivate your kid, finding out what makes them tick, what makes them want to get up every day. Like, so I started after the conversation that you and I had, Joseph, years ago, was like, my job is to get up every day and, do whatever I do, like to make a living, to make money, to put a roof over our head and whatever. Your job is to go to school, learn all the information you can today, because it's going to stack. And as you get older, you're going to be able to use that information. That's your job. And I get paid through money. How do you want to get paid? And it's like, and it's not monetary. It's like, we're going to have more time together. We're going to be able to do this together. My daughter loves baking. So, hey, look, you get what you need to do. And when you get home and you get your stuff done, we'll bake a cake today. So it's giving them a reason to get out of bed, because again, school is not the pull.
No,
it's not.
No. Well, it can be. It can be if you allow them to describe it. You've heard me say this several times, Vinu, that if I tell you something, you might believe me. But if you tell you and me something, then you will believe me, because you make it up. So I love the conversation right there. The way I approached my son on that same conversation was, I asked him, what do you think my job is? Tell me what you think my job is. And then I had him describe, and he was pretty much spot on. But in a teenager's way, he goes, well, your job is to, make the money and to take care of the household and he finally got around to raising me. That was kind of one of the last things, but he did say it. And I said, that's great. What else would you add to that? And I just kind of played with that for a little while. Now, I think it's important. And again, as we start at the top of this, every child is different and they progress and they learn differently. I left it at that. I didn't come back right in that conversation and say, what is your job? I left it and I go, that's great. Thanks. I'm going to think about stuff. And I left it because what happened, at least in my son's brain, was he again got to be, with no agenda on my part, he got to be right. He got to figure it out. And then I came back and I said, can I add something to it? And then I added, so he goes, yeah. And then it became a conversation. And I said, if I would add to that, and that is to prepare you to be on your own, because at some point you're going to be you're going to want to have your own place. You're going to want to have a car and things like that. And so then I got to add to what he already said. And then I left that. And again, patience is not necessarily one of my strong points. And I would say that with most parents, especially teenagers, it's not as well. But so to be able to leave that and know and trust that his mind is gestating at least some while I'm gone. And then I came back and I said, okay, so you describe my job, describe what your job is. Now that came along with a healthy rolling of the eyes. Because then he was on to me. Then he kind of knew what I was getting at. He's starting to put two and two together. And he says, okay, my job is to clean my room, make my bed, and make good grades. And I go, great. What else would you add to that? And so it got to be a longer conversation. Now, guess what he was doing in the meantime? Playing video games.
Right.
And he would go back to that stuff, and I didn't hassle him over it. Because I feel like I'm choosing my battles, and a little bit at a time is better than moving backwards.
Right.
And so what happened was I came along, and then I came along with a conversation. What do you want? And he had a hard time with that, because with him, I said, what do you want now? Not what do you want in the future? What do you want now? And he goes, well, I want to get, and I forget how he put it, like level 15 at whatever the game that he was playing and everything. And I said, okay, you know what my job and you know what your job is. And so if I can help you get to that level and do that, would you be interested? And he goes, well, yeah, of course. Now, I don't know how to play, like I said, I don't know how to play the video game. And I do know that I can show him things about how to pace himself. Like, for example, I shared with him the studies of people that work, 9 to 5 with a 1 hour break, produce less and achieve less than the people that work for 45 minutes and take a 10-minute break, work for 45 minutes, take a 10-minute break. And I shared with him that. And I said, so here's what, let's try something. And it's just an experiment. Let's see how you do doing this for 45 minutes. And then your 10-minute break, you get to play on your video games, and then vice versa on the days that you are allowed to do you can do your video games. Let's do just the opposite. You do your video games for 45 minutes and then take 10 minutes to do this. And what happened was we got in this ritual, this thing going on. And I am by no stretch of the imagination saying that my son is perfect and he's doing everything that he's supposed to, because it's still, a bit of a battle as we go through. And I will say that we've got lots of progress. His grades are doing much, much better. And he's moved from that place of, Vina, you said this earlier, that we live in this digital age. And we live in this age where the unfortunate thing is that whether it's social media, video games, or any of that stuff, even Netflix and things like that, they are designed to keep and hold that child's attention, all of our attentions. And that's what we're competing with. So that having a little bit of progress is better than none.
Well, I mean, and I've learned this from you many times. It's progress over perfection.
Yes. Oh gosh.
We're not trying to make it perfect. And one of the things that I tell families that I work with, and even my own kids, between the time that they're born till 18, this is boot camp for them. This is where they get the training. This is where they get the knowledge. This is where they get to taste what life is going to be as they learn how to adult. And then after 18, some of you kids out there are going to leave and be gone. I know both my boys at 18, they're like, we don't live by your rules. We're out. And I'm like, peace out. Enjoy. And both my boys are successful. They're both welders and they do a great job. Nice. My one son earns a living for him and his wife and his daughter, and she gets to stay home with my daughter. So it's a pretty good living to be able to do that in this time of age, and yet they had to learn the hard way. But they also watched me as a single mom. They watched me work 3 jobs just to put food on the table, to make ends meet, and they saw what I call grit, like nothing ever got me down. Like I was determined no matter what. So it's also the role model that our kids see also. It's like my kids don't ever see me, just laying around in bed. Although,
Right.
like I was telling you before the show, I have shingles now. And so the last couple of days I have been in bed, and my kids are like, "You're still in bed?" Because it's so new. Like, they never see me in bed. They never see me in bed. Like, I am up and I'm going, and I go to bed after them. I get up before them. And so they're just really shocked. I'm like, "Yeah, mom's not feeling well, But it's beautiful. It's a hard concept for them, because I'm not in bed. I am on it. I am working. I'm doing something. I'm making progress in my life. And that's what they get to see too.
Well,
So
let me ask you this question, because that is beautiful. Here's a question for you. Two questions. Number one, while they were growing up, especially your sons that did that, did they fully appreciate that you were up early and doing all the extra stuff while they were going through it?
I can't say they appreciated it then, but I see what they do now, and
Right.
it's showing up in
Right.
their
So that's
adulthood.
my point. That's my point. That we as parents, that I've had to recognize what you said, Vinu, is that knowing, by being that example, by not teaching theory, by being the example of what you want for them, is at some point going to be something that they appreciate. Because in the moment, not so much. In the moment, it's like my entire son's life. When he's with me, every morning I get up and I make him a nice, healthy breakfast. Every morning I do everything for him, and he is same with you. He never sees me. I'm up early. I'm stay up late. He knows that I'm constantly doing stuff, and he also sees me enjoy myself as well, because
Right.
I like to do that. And um, it's almost as though, and I hate to say this about my own child, it's almost as though they are, how can I delicately say this, entitled little jerks. Because they just expect it, they
Right.
just, that's the way that it's supposed to be. And I don't require it. They never go, "Dad, my entire life, you've gotten up every morning and you've made me a nice, healthy breakfast. You've made sure clothes were on my back, shoes were on my feet, that I had a place to go. You've always made sure." They never do that. It's just like, "Okay, Dad, or can I go to volleyball camp? That's going to be a $2,000 thing. Can I go to volleyball camp?" And they expect that. And
Right.
so I don't go, "You ungrateful little crap hound. You should be grateful that this has happened." I will make it clear that, yes, this is going to be a stretch for you to do this, and I want you to know how much this costs, and what I'm going to be doing and doing that. But the last thing I want to do is make them feel bad because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. I think right now, and especially in our household, because my older boys were very entitled, you know, but I grew up in that generation of the X generation, Generation X,
Yes.
where we were the latchkey kids. Our parents worked, we were kind of raising our own selves. And now I wanted my kids to have something different. Oh, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you. I created entitled kids. So
Yeah.
now we want to do it different now with the next generation of kids I
Yeah.
have. And so we are teaching them value. When they want something, we'll say, "Well, how much do you think that costs? And what would you have to do to earn that?" And so, we bring that into what life is about, because my husband and I, we don't want to raise entitled kids. We want our kids to know that you don't just get to sit back and be unmotivated for anything and let life happen to you. Like, life's not going to work that way. You're not going to get what you want in life. You need to figure out, what do you want, and go after it.
Well,
And,
Vina,
again,
here's
one of the things that you always say is, it takes action. Life takes action
yeah.
to accomplish anything.
Here's the question: in raising your kids this way, and again, now you're raising a different generation of kids. So, so a twofold question. One is, how is that working out now? Or what's different about this generation of kids that you're raising now, in terms of them understanding and executing the things that you're trying to teach them now, versus the older generation of your earlier boys that didn't necessarily you didn't raise the same way? Is there anything different in the way that they're perceiving it and the actions that they're taking now?
I think one of the small differences I see is that my kids understand that it's not something that's just going to be given to you.
Mm.
You don't just get to get it because you put a permission slip in front of my face.
You know what's interesting? Yeah. Is and my son and I have had conversations. I've had this conversation with other people as well. In my personal opinion, Vinu, television in all of its forms now, which television now is your cell phone and everything.
Right.
And there's direct correlations. Television, I think the very first television show was, don't quote me on that. I think it was in 1947 was the very first television show. Don't quote me on that, but it was very much earlier than most of us think. No, it was earlier than that because it's been around almost 100 years. I remember looking this up. It was almost 100 years now. Television has actually been around. Now, in my day, at the risk of sounding like the wise old sage, I remember there was no color television. I remember when color television came in. Now, by that time, it had already been going on for 20, 30 years. And back then, there were 3 television stations, only 3. And they came on at 8 o'clock in the morning and they went off the air at 10 o'clock at night. There was a test pattern after that. There were only 3 stations to choose from. And they were, there was a lot of commercials going on and everything. But here's my point. Now it's 24/7, nonstop. There's 1,000 television stations. And then we have our phone, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have all of that stuff. So it's 24/7. And all of it, not some of it, all of it is designed to keep you watching that screen.
Yeah.
Because that's how they make their money. And the other thing that I think I try to make this point and help people recognize is that when you see, first off, it's all acting. I've had the privilege of coaching and mentoring and working with a lot of actors and actresses and so on and so forth. And it's all acting. None of that stuff is real. Even the news, even the media, none of it is real. And when you look at a child's brain, as you said, teenagers, they're still developing. Even though they feel like they're not developing, they're still developing. And what's put in front of them from a very young age nowadays is that the parents and the older people are the buffoons and that the children are the ones that are smart. The children are, the way that they talk to those parents. And then more importantly, what they see these children, the lives that they're living, that there are some like, oh gosh, I can't even think of any shows, but the children always have the best of the best stuff. The children, they're going places. They've got all this great, superhero equipment. They've got this car. They've got all that stuff. Where did that stuff come from? It's just all of a sudden it's there. And so that, in my opinion, is what has developed and has created this entitlement attitude of a lot of children, a lot of people now, because those children, because they don't look at the hard work that it took to make that happen.
Correct.
I was watching this guy a few days ago, and I'm not in a full agreement with everything that this man says. His name is Jordan Peterson, I believe his name is. But anyway, he had a really interesting concept, and he was talking about the roles and the unappreciation of the genders. He said, for women who are feeling like, I know we're bouncing outside of teenagers, but remember, those teenagers are going to be adults.
Yeah.
Who feel like they can and should do it all and they can do everything a man can do, are not appreciating that this world is built by men who do the hard stuff, the ones that are at the bottom of the coal mines and that are doing all these hard things. And men who feel like, well, women are just these trophies and these things to be, sexual objects and so on and so forth. They're not appreciating that what women do, and I'm saying in general, because I don't want to piss anybody off, the role of a mother, the role of a wife, the role of all these things and the things that women do that are outside of that masculine side. Now, I say all of that because all that stuff has come down to right now. These people are seeing, teenagers are seeing these roles that have been reduced to, in my opinion, down to the smartest people is the youth. The smartest people and the people that should be running the show is the youth. Because in the olden days, the wisdom came from the elderly. Well, not elderly, but it came from the generation that was before. And now it's come down to they're role models and things like the Kardashians and the list goes on and on. And the unfortunate side of that is that what comes along with youth is a bit of stupidity. What
Right.
comes along with youth is ignorance. What comes along with youth is lack of experience. And so if you're learning from somebody that is feigning to be developed at the highest stage, then it's a predetermined outcome that's going to be. You're going to raise more and more people that don't have the skill set to be an adult.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely correct. And it's also their role model then. And again, it's all about role modeling. Like who are
Yeah,
influencing our kids to believe up to create their belief systems, right? Because their belief systems are the foundation of all the things that
no
they
doubt.
create in their life, and you have that saying like so I think as I think so I feel I,
So I
so
do.
so I do, and as I do I have, right?
Yes,
And
correct.
it's the same thing kids do too. They have a
Yeah,
thought and then they have a feeling about it. And then they're like, huh, do I really want to get up and go to school today? Do I really want to do my chores today? Like, it's just that, like, and are they going to take the action to do it? And that's really what it all comes down to is how do we get our kids to move? How do we get them to do things, especially when they don't want to do it?
yeah. I would say part of the answer to that is, first off, the first answer is, what do they want? Help
Right.
find out exactly what they want, even if we don't agree with what it is, and then teach them how to get that. And then, which is pretty critical, is to reward their little steps. Anything that moves in the direction of what you want and what they want, reward it and acknowledge it. Because on a neuro encoding and a neurological level, then what is happening is the brain is going, hey, that felt good. I got dopamine hit. Let's do it again. And then they start to do that stuff unconsciously. They start to
Right.
pick it up. Yeah.
So help our listeners because you have this great way of explaining why people go for what they want and they don't follow through to get it. Like they just stop.
Yeah, it's a semi multifaceted answer, Vinu. And here's what I'll say: is oftentimes what you said earlier, not oftentimes, but all the time, our beliefs are what support what we do. It's as you said before, what we think is what we'll feel, and what we'll feel is what we'll do, and what we'll do is what we'll have. But the think part of it is where I always try to start there, because people go, okay, well, let's change this behavior. Here's the behavior: this person's not getting out of bed, this person is unmotivated, this person is procrastinating, and things like that. Well, the reason why they aren't is because of what they're thinking. And thinking is psychology, and to us, psychology is, to simplify it, the consistent conscious and unconscious thoughts that we have about ourselves, thoughts slash beliefs about ourselves, about other people, and then our environment, the world around us. Top of that list is what we think about ourselves. So if a person, wants to do something, they want to lose weight, or they want to make money, or they want to do whatever, they want that. But if they have a belief that they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, or they have this inhibition about themselves, then that is their feeling. And when they approach something, then that feeling is going to go, I'm not good enough. So they're going to procrastinate, and they're going to eat cake, or they're going to, sleep, or do whatever. And then add alcohol and drugs and television, which is a drug in itself, and all that stuff, which is going to take them out of that pain in that moment. Because this, we all know this, that accomplishing something is going to take work, is going to take being uncomfortable. And within your psychology, you have equated uncomfortableness to your identity, that your identity is, when things get tough, I eat cake. Or
Right.
when things get tough, I watch Netflix. And if we do that enough times, then that becomes our default.
Right.
And so the battle is, we're up against all of those influences that they've had about themselves, and all of those influences that they're continuing to have right now. Our secret weapon is to, I'll back up, and you've heard me say this a billion times by now, Vinu. If you come into my office and you got a fear of dogs, there's going to be a dog in the office. And the reason being is because I want you to experience the fear right then and there. Bring it out. so we can do something about it. And that do something about it is to interrupt that pattern and to do it over and over again until we can we can replace that pattern with something that works for them. I know that was a really quick overview of it, but this is what works. This is what has allowed me to be as effective as I am in helping people get over their fears and their phobias and their emotional challenges and even procrastination and hesitation and things like that.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of the basis of the neuroencoding, which, as the instructor of that, it's helping people realize like we want lasting change, even with our
Yes.
kids. So again, it's going back to like, what do they want? What does your kid want?
Yes.
And don't criticize what they want. Don't judge what they want. Just say, great. And what do you need to do to get it? And I even go as far as this, if that's what you want, is what you're doing right now taking you towards it or away
Nice.
from it?
Right. Nice.
Because it's giving them back ownership.
Yeah. Because here's what my sincerest belief is and hope for everybody is that when you approach it like that, even we said this at the top of the show, Vinu, that even if we don't agree with what they want, because here's the saying I like to say, and that is, if you don't ask somebody what they want, on some level, they know you don't know. And so they can and probably will feel like you're trying to get them to do something for you and not for them. And the analogy that I use is if I say to those of you that are watching and listening to us now, if I say to you, if you work hard and you sacrifice, you get up early, you stay up late, you do the extra stuff for 1 year, you do all of that stuff, you spend your time, your capital, your energy, your efforts, everything for 1 year solid. At the end of that year, I promise you, my son and I are going to take a vacation and go to Hawaii and have the time of our lives. You're thinking to yourself, well, screw you. I want to go to Hawaii. What about me? And that's an exaggeration. And that is an exaggeration of the feeling that that person is left with if you don't ask them what they want. And so even if you don't agree with what they want and you find out what they want, I try to bank on common sense and the need to survive. They'll come around at some point. At least I've got that connection with them, and I can say, okay, in order to get that and to be able to do that, we've got to do these things. And I love the question that you just said. Is what you're doing right now getting you closer to what you want? If they say no, if they say yes, then great. Okay, so would you like to do more? Would you like to enhance it so you get it faster? If they say no, then go, great. What could we do different so that you can get there faster? Then oftentimes what happens is they start to lose track of this thing that is harmful to them, because trust me, they know, they're not stupid. They know that playing too much video games is not good for you. They know that. They know that any of those things are not good for them. So this is a path to help them to get there. And so, go ahead.
And I just want to say, and so I think one of the biggest keys that I learned going through the neuroencoding program, and this is something that I did not do as a parent as much as I should have done. And I actually put it in my book. It's chapter 3 of my book, Teach Your Children That They're Enough. It's celebrate.
Nice.
Celebrate, because our kids think we're going to celebrate just their grades, or we're going to celebrate the award they get at school. Are we celebrating the day that they got up, the day that they didn't want to get up and go to school?
Yes.
Like that to me will reignite the motivation, because I know a lot of parents like to use that word motivation, and that's fine if that's your vocabulary, you want to use it.
Works. Yeah.
So it's relighting that emotion that's going to motivate them, because then the more that you see your child, the more that they are seen by you, appreciated by you, because they're celebrated by you, the more they're going to want to do.
Yeah, I'm smiling so big because we had such an example of that over the last 6 months. I'm a musician, and I'm not trying to make my son a musician. I just wanted him to get the value of the practice and what that meant and everything. So he has piano lessons, and he won't practice his piano unless I schedule it and make him do it. He won't do it. And he has oftentimes showed up at his lesson having never practiced what he learned. And so it was frustrating to me because I love music and I like to practice and things like that. So what happened was, and by the way, my son is the polar opposite of me. I like, up-tempo music and stuff like that. He listens to something called lo-fi, which is like really mellow and jazzy kind of thing. And so, I'm back there I have a studio. I'm back there going, whose kid is this? What's he listening to? There's nothing wrong with that. But I came to the realization that that's him. That's who it is. But here's what happened was instead of practicing the stuff that he's supposed to be practicing, he's practicing lo-fi stuff. He's making stuff up. He's going on YouTube and learning those songs on there. Now, I remember in the past going, practice what you're supposed to practice. But I caught myself and I just said what you just said right there, praise him. And I would come down, that's really great. That's awesome. You learned that on your own. And what I've noticed, Vinu, is that, like I said, I'm not trying to make him a musician, but guess what he's doing? He may not be practicing what I want him to practice or even what the teacher wants him to practice, but he's practicing this other stuff and he does it on his own. We have a piano right in the middle of the room and he's got to walk by it every single day. And now what I notice is he walks by and sits down and plays just for a few minutes. And I know that it came from my appreciating and my acknowledging and praising him. Now, the next step is, imagine what it's like having me for a dad. Is I get him to praise himself. When he gets up from the bench, pat himself on the back, hey, I did this. And his improvement and as a piano player, he's playing music that he wants. If he decides that he wants to play professionally, he's got that background, he can do that, but he doesn't have to. But now he's learned that skill of practicing.
Yeah, that reminds me of a time. I always say it was my past life before I was a coach. I worked mental health, and I left mental health to be a teacher for a small portion in a high school. And I had the kids that had the behavior problems. And when I went in that class, the teacher says, so here's a stack of magazines I used to read. I'll leave them for you because I was like replacing this teacher. And I was like, well, what do you do with the kids? He's like, oh, nothing. They're not going to do anything for you. I'm like, but what if we wanted them to do something for us? He's like, well, we're supposed to get them to write and stuff, but they're not going to write. So don't waste your time. Let them do what you do. Take a break. So I said, no. And so my first day, I asked the kids, first of all, I engaged them in conversation of things that they wanted to talk about. And then I picked topics. I said, if you guys were going to write a story, what would it be? Give me different topics. So I wrote all these topics on the board that they wanted to. I said, great. Now pick one and tell me a story about it. I got them to write.
Yeah.
I got them to write. That's the motivation. When we say motivation is what is going to be appealing to them? What is going to make it fun for them? Kids want fun. That's the one thing that most adults I see have lost that we're trying to get. I have definitely worked on having fun and I have fun a lot now in my life, but I also married a fun guy. So he makes me have fun. But we lose it. When we're kids, why do we take more chances? Because we look in the fun of it. We're so innocent in the judgment of it or anything that we're just going to go out on a limb and try it. And because it's fun. Yeah. But as adults, we're not looking at the fun. We're like, oh, it's work. I got to do this and stuff. So it's bringing back the fun. So make it fun for your kids. Again, what do they want? Make it fun, celebrate them. And one thing that you said, Joseph, that I wanted to really bring home is help them praise themselves.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is so huge. They have got to learn because one day you're not going to be there and they need to be able to stand up. And I always say, put your hand up, bend over and pat yourself on the back. It's like in my head all the time because of you, Joseph. And how great is that, right? Because my kids now do it. They see us, we do it, and they'll have fun with it. And we'll just be like, put your hands up. And we'll start patting ourselves on the back. And it's so great because when they do something great in that moment, I want them to capture it.
Yeah.
Whether I'm there or not.
I didn't grow up that way, and I had a hard time learning that lesson for myself. As a matter of fact, I was the antithesis, which a lot of people are, is they beat themselves up versus praise themselves. And when I learned that lesson, and I'm going to give he's the only teenager that I have in my brain, in my life, is my son. I'll use an example that him knowing that and him doing that. Two examples. When he was little, again, me as a dad, I always do things, and I'm the role model for him. So you've seen me teach this in seminars. You walk through a door, I always throw my arms up and go like this, and do what I call the golden god, the golden goddess. Now he's seen me do this his whole life. So when he was like 2 or 3 years old, just how he's walking alongside of me, and we walk up to the door to the supermarket. And it's got a pressure pad, so you step on the pad and the door opens up. And so just before I stepped on it, he pulls my hand back and pulls me back and like, I got this, Dad. He doesn't say that, but he steps on the pad, and there's this little tiny kid. He throws his arms up like this because he's seen me do it a bunch of times. And he takes a bow as he steps through. Well, inside the store, there's a Starbucks. And there are people in line, adults in line, and they see the doors open up and this little kid doing that, and they go like, and they're clapping for him, and he just cracks up and that kind of thing. Fast forward. Now my son is a volleyball player. That's the thing that he loves now. It's the thing, the saving grace that gets him away from playing video games all the time. So when he makes a good shot or a spike or something like that, or does anything at all, he's the one, and I've watched the progression of it spread throughout his team. He's the one, whenever he does something, he celebrates. He does like a stupid little dance or pats himself on the back or shakes his ass or something like that. And now I'm watching it. It's infectious amongst the other kids on his team. And they're all doing it, and they're all doing their little thing. And I watch the other teams, like he's volleyball for high school, but he does club volleyball. And I watched the other teams when they were doing the tournaments. Even if they were losing, whenever they do a shot, they'd celebrate like crazy, and they're doing all this stuff. And it throws the other teams off guard because they're not doing it. And so I encourage, to teach your children to praise themselves, and then also let them, as they get out there and do it, they're impacting other people as well.
Yeah. Again, it keeps going back to role model, right? Like you modeled this to your kid. He does it. And that's really it. So like, again, the motivation is find out what they want, make it fun for them, and make sure you are not judging what they want. You're actually enforcing it, because that's the motivation. Are they getting what they want? That's really what's going to motivate. I mean, what motivates you? I mean, what motivates me is getting what I want. If I know I can get what I want, that's going to motivate me to get up, as you say, shake our, we're on TV, so shake our behinds. I don't know what words we can say on TV anymore. And a lot more than we could say back in the day, though, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
And go after what you want, and when you are like that with your kids, imagine when they get out of this boot camp that we called life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are they going to be? Who are they going to be? Because you gave them opportunity with these simple steps. And this is really what redefining parent is, because as Joseph and I have been talking about, we weren't raised this way. This was not our childhood. It was something that we've learned, and now we teach. And, and again, Joseph, that's why I brought you on here, because you have been one of my teachers for almost 20 years now. And, I know that I'm doing what I'm doing because of some of the learnings I've learned from you, the neuroencoding, what you have created to help more people help people in the world by giving sustainable changes in their life, by changing the patterns in our brains so we default to what we really want. Like, you're it, and I'm so honored to be on your side and sharing your.
I think first off, thank you so much for that, and you're selling yourself short, because you're not just on my side. You are one of the core instructors that teaches other people that you said at the beginning, we have created so many other people that have gone out there, become successful, and made their own businesses and changing other people's lives. Well, a great deal of that is because of you, because they have to go through you in order to get certified, and you support them and you take care of them. You're such a shining example of not just the skills and the tools that we have, but the application of them, and to be able to teach it as well. So I'm honored, and I thank you as well.
Well, we have one more minute. If there's anything else you want to tell our audience, just some, a nice, I'm sure you could tell them a lot, just something that they could take forward, like not even just with their kids, but in their life, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I'll kind of leave it at this, Vinu, is that, whether it's philosophies or religions and things like that, we always hear that we're here for a purpose, and that we all have a reason and a purpose on this planet. And I like to point out to everybody, we have more than one purpose. You're a mother, you're a father, you're a sister, a brother, you have all of those roles. You have many, many more purposes. And if I was to boil it down to the most important purposes that you have are, number one, to be kind to yourself first. And then secondly, be kind to others, because there's so much that comes along with that. As you do that, you become a better person. You become a better person to yourself, and you tend to go further faster. And then you become a shining example for everybody. And lastly, those of us that dare to dream while the rest of the world is having a nightmare, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that's true, that most of the world is. We're not only going to create the abundance and all the things that we want for our lives, but the best part about it is that we become shining examples of what's possible for the rest of the world to do as well. So life is exactly what you dare to make it, and fortune favors the bold.
I
So
love it.
bold.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much again, Joseph. And as I always tell you, all the listeners out there, be curious, not critical.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
all of us help give our kids a childhood they don't have to heal from, just by taking these little things that we learn each week from the guests that I bring on here, to give our kids that childhood that they can be proud of, that they can go out and make something of themselves. So that ends our show today. The show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.
Thank you, Vinu.